Helen's Daughters is an Empower Women's project based in St. Lucia that promotes the principles of rural women's economic empowerment in agriculture through social change. Helen's Daughters was born out of the belief that there was a need to support rural women in the use of adaptive agricultural techniques, capacity building, and improve market access. In 2021, Helen's Daughters launched a cohort right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. This cohort is headed by agribusiness and market linkages AG expert, Dr. Kamara Louisy. Dr. Kamara is here with us today to share more about Helen's Daughters cohort here in the Federation. Hi, good morning, Doctor.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. You seem very excited to be here.
I am. This is a great project that I have been involved with. I'm so excited to talk about it because I'm very passionate about the empowerment of women through various avenues. So this is one of the programs that I am so excited to be a part of.
So why was the project coined Helen's Daughters, Doctor?
Okay, so the name Helen's Daughters comes from St. Lucia's nickname, Helen of the West. Basically, historically speaking, because it was fought over so many times, just like Helen of Troy, right? They adopted that name. It also, as well as representing the St. Lucian aspect, speaks about the allure and the power that women have.
All right, so can you tell us exactly the purpose of the organization?
Yes. Okay. So the purpose of the organization basically is for economic empowerment for women in the region. So it started out in St. Lucia, as you said before, and the program has branched out to St. Vincent and to St. Kitts and Nevis, right? It's a push to encourage women who are backyard gardeners or farmers and so on into the formal sector, because small farms feed more of the world's populations than the large industrial farms, right? So there's a focus on sustainable agriculture with agricultural business techniques, good agricultural practices, market linkages, financial literacy, which is something that's very important. And it's tailored in a way so that women can benefit from the program, even down to the times that we have the programs in the evening and so on, because most women in the region, they are the persons who hold down the household. So, they're the ones that look after the children, the family, the elderly, they work, and so on. So the program is kind of designed in a way that it's easy for them to access and manage as well as attend. Initially, the program was allocating or looking towards just having 20 participants. However, over 80 women applied, right? And we're very excited. So it was just supposed to be for one cohort, but because of the numbers that applied, it was split, right? So the first cohort would have been from November to December in 2021. And now the second cohort is from January to March 2022. And we're hoping that as the program continues with more support, that we'll have in person, because currently it's online, right? So hopefully in the future, we'll have in-person trainings and in-person exchanges so that more women can benefit.
All right, so Doctor, these numbers that you gave for the cohort, these were petitions and divisions?
Yes.
All right, backup question here is, how was St. Kitts and Nevis identified to be part of the cohort in the first place?
The St. Kitts Nevis, because of it was observed that we have a growing population of women, especially over the course of the pandemic, who were seeking information in terms of going further than where they are. So during the pandemic, something very good happened. Persons realized that self-sustainability was important. And many persons started doing backyard gardening, farming, and doing other projects, agro-processing, and a lot of other things. And so because of that interest, number one, and two, the food and nutrition program that is sponsored by the University of the West Indies, which has several projects in St. Kitts and Nevis, they we were identified, and the Helen's daughters had the persons from FAN reach out to facilitators and to the population to find out, and therefore they said, okay, well, we're going to test this both in St. Kitts and Nevis and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because St. Vincent and the Grenadines had a similar growth spurt in terms of women who are interested in branching out into different areas based on their experiences during pandemic.
And now we're going to take a look at your involvement in agriculture in the Federation. So you mentioned that you're also a livestock extension officer.
Yes.
What does that position involve?
It is, where should I start? Okay, I'm going to try and simplify it as much as possible. So basically, it's technical support for the livestock farmers in terms of improving their good agricultural practices for production, for profit building, for sustainability. Along with the technical, there's also the record keeping aspect in terms of getting population numbers, looking at trends, especially like for poultry and pig production. And then there's the management, or the attempt to manage farmers when it comes to how they manage their herds in terms of the them straying, looking after and being responsible for the government pound, trying to enforce the pound ordinance, wild animal management in terms of if there's maybe a donkey injured or a donkey problem, I'm called out and I try to resolve that issue. Conflict management and resolution between livestock farmers and livestock and crop farmers, if animals damage properties, doing projects in terms of being a technical officer for various projects like the FAN project. And there's another project that I worked on recently, which is with FAO in terms of helping with combat climate changes for feed production for animals, health consultations, reproductive consultations, health checks, reproductive checks, education of farmers, workshops, skill sets, education of the general public, and a whole list of
I can see why you laughed.
laughed.
That's a long list.
Yes, there's more.
So that's why I would like to ask you, what gave you an interest in agriculture? Like, I remember doing agricultural science in high school, and I was maybe one of the 2 females in the class. So traditionally, we don't feel like women should be involved in agriculture. Can you tell us why you got interested?
Well, the thing is, with that statement that you made, traditionally, when you look around, actually, women have been the backbone of agricultural practices from time immemorial. If you're looking at when you started with, human beings starting to settle down and have villages and so on, where the men went out to hunt and everything else, agriculture, the planting and so on of the crops and so on, the women were the one that were tending the fields, right? And that has been brought forward even through the unfortunate, history of our people being enslaved and coming forward. So women have been there consistently. The issue is that they're not viewed as quote unquote farmers, the term, right? More as maybe the help, the work along and so on. But when you look around the region and you see, and you pass farms and so on, you see women, predominantly women, are the ones, especially in small farms, who are doing the backbone and bringing the things to the market, right? And so for me personally, I come from an agricultural background, a medical background, a creative background, all kind of background, right? So my grandmother, she was one of the first female headmasters. I listened in earlier when you're talking about the Gingerland Secondary School. She was actually the first principal for the Gingerland Secondary School. Wow. Right? And then she went on to become the principal of the Charlestown Secondary School. However, she was always gardening. She always had gardening, and she had livestock, and she had rabbits, and she had a host of other things, which I was helpful with her from a young age, was always behind her in the garden, helping her with the animals and so on. So I came up with a natural love for farming and for animals specifically. And then my grandfather, who on my father's side, who is St. Lucian, so I do have St. Lucian heritage, that's where my last name comes from, Louisy. He was one of the main vets in St. Lucia for the agriculture department for a long while. So I had exposure to that too. So when I used to go to St. Lucia to visit and everything else, I would go out with him into the field when he used to visit farms and farmers and so on. So it's kind of been ingrained in me from a very young age. And I've always had a love for animals in particular. I'm kind of a introvert. Don't mind the peppiness right now.
We couldn't tell.
Right. And so I've always had a love for animals, a closeness and appreciation for animals. And from a very young age, I always wanted to do something that was involved with animals. But I do have a multi-tiered background in terms of education, because I do have a creative aspect to my background and to my history. And so I do have a degree, a first degree, a Bachelor of Arts in history, with an aim with cultural studies for, in women and their contribution in the region. So that is just along with my veterinarian certification, obviously. So it's a good combination, and it's an odd combination for persons that don't understand, but there's ways, because I understand the history behind the role of women in the region, that I can put the two together and try as much as possible to contribute to the development of women in the region.